Right, morning. Day 2 of the Health and Wellbeing at Work Conference 2025, and we have Sarah Bolton. So, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Sarah Bolton. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Lighthouse Charity,
Mm.
and we are the charity that support anybody that works in construction or the allied trades.
That is so interesting. I've got lots of questions for you.
Okay, good, good.
I've done a little bit of work in construction. So, my background, I'm a business psychologist. Obviously, I work in wellbeing, surprise, surprise, and have worked with a number of different construction firms over the years. And the interesting thing for me is just how seriously that industry seems to be taking well-being in general, but also mental health. Have you seen that kind of move?
Yeah, definitely. I think they're all embracing it now, making some great strides and really implementing some good solutions into their businesses to support the workers with mental health conditions.
Yeah. Do you think it's particularly important for that industry?
Absolutely. I think we have, unfortunately, a really high statistic around suicide. So we lose two construction workers every working day. So that's something that can't be ignored. And it was definitely overdue that we needed to get some solutions in place. But I think the industry are doing a great job embracing that and making it a positive step forwards.
Yeah, wow. So how do those stats compare to other industries? Is that particularly high or
Yeah, it is particularly high, and we are one of the worst industries. I think the second one is the farmers.
oh really?
Yeah, but they're obviously slightly smaller than construction. So.
Yeah. But interesting as well that it's, I guess, what, like a manufacturing kind of organization when you talk about pharmaceutical as well. Do you know why it's particularly high in those industries?
I think there's lots of reasons. There's not one specific reason. I think it's around they do a lot of loan working. It's predominantly male, and it's they're particularly hard industries.
Hard industries, what do you mean? Just
In terms of they have to battle the elements, and there's a lot of pressures to get things done quickly,
yeah.
and things that are maybe out of their control.
Yeah, absolutely. And my theory on this has always been in terms of why I've seen construction firms or organizations of that kind taking mental health and well-being more seriously is because historically they are quite, they take physical health and safety very importantly. Do you think that's helped in terms of then bringing in the mental side of things?
I think, yeah, they're very well versed in looking after people's physicality and putting stuff in to prevent accidents and things like that. And I think now that they're extending that knowledge and putting that into emotional support.
Yeah, yeah. And I was working with a construction firm recently, and they were almost kind of implementing a psychosocial risk assessment approach. Have you heard of this? So where you measure psychological risks in the same way that you would do physical risks. And they thought it would be a very difficult sell for people. They thought people, because it's related to mental health, this is soft and fluffy. We don't want to talk about that. But actually they found that people really wanted to have those conversations, and almost, I guess, the structure around it and the process around it, because it was similar to the physical health and safety side of things, it was like speaking their language, if you see what I mean.
I think people will be more encouraged. I think there's a lot of stigma around mental health, so I think people don't want to talk about it. But I think if it's seen that it comes from the top down from management, they're much more likely to talk about it. We have what we call a Make It Visible tour team. So we have 4 vans that go around construction sites talking. They're all tradespeople. They all talk about their lived experience, and they're relatable because they worked in construction or they still do work in construction. And last year we spoke to over 28,000 people, all related to mental health and their situations. And we actually had 89 active rescues. So that was 89 people approached our team saying that they had suicidal ideation or plans.
Yeah.
And we managed to get all of those people into counselling and into a safe outcome.
Yeah.
So there is definitely a need for this sort of intervention. And it's just a question of making it permissible to speak and breaking down that stigma and saying it is okay not to be okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. I talked yesterday to somebody who was all talking about evidence-based practice, and one of the points was that we've not even defined well-being properly, and we're starting from and we don't know what we're measuring, and are we actually having an impact? But you've just said that that sounds like an impact, right?
Well, I mean, if every life is an impact, and
Absolutely.
if we've saved 89 of them, then I personally think we've done quite well last
Yeah.
year. And 28,000 people we've spoken to I mean, not all of them have access to service, but quite a high percentage have for other things. So it's not just around emotional support; it's financial support, it's physical support, housing. There's lots of things that people struggle with, and our ethos is if we can get a bit preventative and maybe get people to call up before they get to crisis, then it's actually far easier to support somebody.
Yeah.
And actually, if we, we're really looking at our education piece now, and we're trying to educate people in saying this, how you can help yourself. This is some solutions, and not great, grand solutions, just everyday stuff that really easily to implement.
Like what?
We know, like from a financial perspective, how to sort of save a bit of money, change your energy supplier, all of the things that are in the public domain, but a lot of people have time to do it. And people, when they're in sort of financial issues, don't always think of doing the basics. So, and we don't have in this country great financial education. When you're in school, did you ever do?
Yeah.
No.
Well, no, not in school, and no one ever talks about it
No,
either.
no, and we are as a we don't like talking about money.
Yeah.
And actually, there is just as big financial stigma,
Yeah.
exactly the same level, I would say, as mental health.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're really championing to kind of break down, because we give financial support as well.
Yeah.
But it's about how can you afford that washing machine that you can't buy for yourself. So how can we help you, making sure that you're maximizing all the things you're entitled to, reducing your outgoings, and making you into a more sustainable pathway.
Yeah, nice one. So I don't know the exact study, but I don't know whether you've heard it. Apparently there was a study done. I'm sure I read it somewhere a few years back, where they asked people in the street, random people, to tell them about their salary. So how much do you earn? And then they also asked them to tell them about their sex lives. And what they found was that people were more likely to talk about their sex lives than they were about their salary.
People
Like,
don't like talking about money. That's what I'm saying. There is a massive stigma. People don't, they hesitate to sometimes call our helpline because they don't want us to be saying, well, why are you spending your money on that? Or, and we're completely non-judgmental. People have life events that, maybe your spending isn't great, but they're things outside of your control. And none of these things are anything that you should be punished for. It's how we just support you into making some good decisions, and how you can just recover from that without getting into such financial difficulty, because there's definitely a link between financial issues and emotional issues.
oh,
The stress of being in debt, of having debt companies calling you every 5 minutes when you're trying to work, you're trying to provide for your family, and all of these things, we want to reach out and say, don't struggle alone, pick up the phone or contact us by our live chat, and we can help.
yeah, yeah. I always think, when you talk about money, there's this saying that, money doesn't make you happy and all the rest of it. And the studies would back that up. It does show that it plateaus essentially. So once you've got enough money to comfortably sustain your lifestyle, then having more and more and more money and being able to afford a Porsche or whatever it might be doesn't make you exponentially happier, unfortunately, although I might want to try it out someday.
And me.
But if you're below the level where you're able to sustain your lifestyle and you're struggling about it and you're stressed out about it, the impact of it can be huge, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all very well to say that if you've got enough money, but when you haven't got enough money and you can't even put food on the table, but you're working every day, so you're standing out, in some freezing cold weather, doing whatever trade you're doing, and then you can't buy your food shop or you can't pay your bills, that must be soul destroying. So actually, why can't you? I mean, okay, we've got cost of living crisis. There's lots of factors to it, but we want to try and support people into getting more sustainable and making sure that they don't have those struggles.
Got you.
Because how can you then start to save up for your Porsche if you can't even buy a loaf of bread? It's relative, isn't it? And you don't want people saying, well, if you just saved your money doing that, well, if you haven't got any money to save, it's all relative, isn't it?
Absolutely. So you mentioned financial well-being. So that's obviously a theme that you've spotted. Have you spotted any other themes that are coming out of these conversations over the last
there's
12
a few
months?
big themes. Whether they're ongoing, really. There's a lot of issues around housing. There's a lot of issues around gambling. And I think a lot of the demographic work away from home. They're not in their they don't have their family or network support around them, and it can get very lonely. So then they, have got to try and fill their time, and they don't always want to necessarily be sitting in a pub or spending more money. But then they, turn to online things, which is not always healthy. A bit too much screen time, maybe start gambling. It's a very easy slope to go down.
Absolutely. Yeah. And where do you think the responsibility lies? I've got some thoughts on this, but where do you think the responsibility lies for this sort of stuff? Is it the individual themselves? Is it their manager? Is it the organization? Is it a charity like yourselves? Who's responsible for this stuff?
I think we all are a little bit, to be honest. It's a community effort, and I think we need to get a little bit more back to community thinking and community support, which is one of our big sort of strategy plans. So we think that, yeah, obviously the person is you're responsible for yourself, aren't
Sure.
you, ultimately? But if there's other groups out there that can support you, then absolutely, why not? I mean, we have set up over 400 beacons throughout the country specifically for people that just want to go and have a chat. They're not all.
What's a beacon?
So a beacon is a group of people that kind of get together on a regular basis. Some of them just sit and have a chat. Some of them, they do practical things, or they might do a bit of sport, or they might build gardens, or, you know, all different things. But it's more about going into a group every week and having somebody else to talk to, somebody that maybe isn't outside of your family, so they're a bit impartial. And it's just company, really,
Yeah.
especially if you're working away from home. So we've got an interactive map on our website that you can, if you're working away from home, you can have a look in there and see where's local to you. So there's an alternative to sitting in the pub or going on, you know, your phone and doing other
I
things.
love that. I love that. And these are in person, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
There are a couple online,
yeah.
but the majority of them, there's over 447. Don't quote me on that. It's about that because it changes every week.
It's on video now.
Yeah, well, approximately,
Yeah.
that are all over the country. So all over UK and Ireland, because we support people all over the UK and Ireland.
Got you. Got you. That sense of community piece is really important. And I mentioned the in person because I feel like whilst online support is useful, it's not. I don't know whether it's ever going to be a full replacement for being in a room with somebody and
I
speaking
think
to people face to face.
No, I think we, you know, we like social interaction. Some people might say, "Oh, I don't really,"
Going to say some of us.
some of us may not, but I think we are sociable creatures,
Yes.
actually, and we do get lonely very easily. And even if you can just go once a week, it's still some social interaction, especially if you're working away from home in some digs that aren't so great, and, you know, there's nothing else to do. At least it's getting you out, and it's giving you a, you know, a bit of a highlight to the week or a change of scene, really.
Yeah, I'd liken it almost to like going to the gym and physical well-being. It's one of those things that it's because I'm naturally introverted, which is a bit strange when I'm on a podcast. But you know, the thought of going out and meeting new people and all the rest of it scares me a little bit, or it's, you know, there's a barrier there. It's more difficult than just sitting at home.
Yeah,
But and not speaking, but it's one of those things that when you do it, you know you enjoy it. So I like I say, it's like the gym. I don't
Yeah.
really want to go, but I know when I go, I feel amazing. So
Yeah, it's just
uh,
forcing you out of your comfort zone a little bit.
yeah,
And I mean, there's no pressure to go. It's up to you. And I think, you know, you can build up to it. And I think once you take that first plunge and you go once, you'll probably meet somebody you connect with, or you'll like what they're doing, or maybe you won't. But, you know, you've got to give it a go.
yeah, I love that message around community. Obviously, I love it because we run a community. But
Yeah.
um, you know, I've sometimes lamented on the fact that, you know, where I live, there's not a huge community feel. You know, and I live in a suburb. You know, it's not like in the inner city or anything like that. But there isn't. You know, I know I live on a cul-de-sac, so you'd think that we'd know everybody, but we're losing that a bit, aren't we?
And I think that's one of the things that made us very British, I suppose, but it also is really important. I mean, I remember growing up in a great community, and where I live now, we don't really have one. Everyone's too busy running around in their lives, but I think we do need to go back to that a little bit. And I think construction is a fabulous community. And actually, if we just make our own little community, I think it will bleed out into other things.
Yeah, yeah. The only community we've got's a WhatsApp group for the road where we moan about the bins. That's it.
Yeah.
No, we do need to bring back community, don't we? It's a
Yeah,
really good point
definitely.
about those social connections. So, how do you work with organisations then? I'm assuming you work with different construction, or do you work with the construction firms directly, or is it more with the employees?
We do a bit of both, really. So we have a company supporter program. So if what we ask is that if big companies want to give us a donation every year, they can access all of the free training, which is so it's not just a donation; they get something for their money. But we can then utilise that to look after the self-employed and the people that aren't in a big company. So the industry are really generous, and they're amazing at looking after their own. So they do have their own community to a degree. So it's just about growing that and expanding that into other things. But we support companies or individuals. So yeah, anybody that is in construction or the allied trades.
Yeah. Well, the allied trades. So,
Yeah.
what are the allied trades?
So that can be if you make bricks,
Oh,
if you make cement, you know, there's anything that's remotely linked to construction, we support.
yeah. And I'm guessing these are organisations at all sorts of different levels, right? From your huge infrastructure projects right through to, yeah.
Absolutely, to the one man band we have actually got one supporter that's just one guy. So,
Really?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When you say supporter, so
Yeah, he gives us an annual donation.
oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, just because Yeah.
Yeah, he wants to give back to the
Yeah, and
whole
he's part of the
industry.
community. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your vision for the future then? What would you if we're sat in this same place in 10 years time and it's all been a huge a success. I shouldn't talk about it like a success, but like, how would you like to see the world change
I think
to
it would be, in an ideal world, it'd be fabulous if we could get the suicide rate down.
mm,
I think maybe everybody thinks that there's a silver bullet, but I don't think there is. But I think what would be great is if people knew where to go for support. So instead of struggling, they knew, oh, we can definitely go there to reach out with no judgment, and they will help. I think that would be a great success.
mm.
I mean, it would be great for our numbers to go down instead of up. So that means people are starting to look after themselves, but make myself redundant would be a good job.
Yeah, that's an interesting. You say about the numbers going down. Do you want the numbers down or do you want them up? Because there's a piece around psychological safety there as well, isn't there? That you almost want to see them up before they go down, in the sense that up might show that the stigmas, there's less stigma associated with it. People are more willing to talk, but then obviously you don't want people contacting in a point of
What would
crisis.
be great if we saw more people contact us for our proactive support.
Great.
So things that get in front of the issue. So training, learning, education pieces. If that we could, encourage people into construction because they're dwindling numbers. Encourage
Oh,
people.
is that true? So the numbers are going down. Well, why do you think that is?
Because lots of people are getting to the age where they're going to retire out of the industry and it's not being replaced.
Oh, okay.
People don't choose construction as a career.
Really?
No.
Do you know why that is? Or
I think there's lots of reasons. I think they don't see it as very glamorous. They don't see it that you could earn money. But there's some fantastic careers in construction, and it's a really good pathway. But we're losing lots of trades. But it's not advocated for really in schools and colleges, and nobody really pushes to go into construction at all.
mm,
So we're doing quite a bit of work with apprentices, saying it's actually a really good industry, and we'll help you and we'll support you in the industry
yeah.
once you get here. And I think people think it's quite harsh, but that is changing. That is changing a lot.
Yeah. Do you know, this is totally tangential, but like, I've always wanted to learn a trade. Honestly, I find it really interesting. I love a bit of DIY. And I was like, I'd just really love to do a real hands-on job, to be perfectly honest. It quite appeals to me. Whether I've got the guts to pack it all in terms of the day job and shift completely, probably not. But
Change of direction.
yeah, but I don't necessarily view it as unglamorous. So it's interesting for you to say it, to talk about it that way. Yeah. Okay. Ace. So, what are you up to for the rest of the day today?
So we are actually launching our health checks today. So we've got a registered nurse in our stand 28. So if anybody wants to come along and have a health check.
And what does a health check look like?
So they do your BMI, your blood pressure,
Yeah, I'm not coming for that.
all of that kind of stuff. It's really interesting, actually. And I think,
Absolutely.
a lot of people, especially, construction, they get stuck on sites all day, long hours. They don't necessarily have time to get to the doctors and check out their physicality. So we're going to be taking this out to sites, then have a quick health check. Tell you how you can improve, some things you can improve, or you might be perfectly healthy. And then, just give you the information, really. It's a bit
Yeah,
of an MOT.
I love it. Are you expecting some of those conversations to turn into mental health conversations? I would have.
I think, yeah, that does get weaved into the questioning. The nurse is also a mental health nurse, but his primary objective is to look at your physical health.
Yeah, but I bet that comes up. I bet when they're talking about, because there's such a link between physical and mental health,
Oh,
right? That
yeah.
if you've broken down that barrier and you're in a position whereby it's the physical MOT that you're talking about, and then it's it could get onto that conversation, which would be great.
Is it inextricably linked, isn't it? As you say, your physicality and your emotional. If you are feeling a bit down, it does affect your physical self, and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, I think the work that you do is amazing.
Thank you.
And yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you
your
so
time.
much. Thank you so much for joining us. And if people want to find you or donate to the charity, how to
Yes, if you want to find us, it's www.lighthousecharity.org. We also have our 24/7 helpline that you can ring at any time, and we have our live web chat. So if you don't feel brave enough to call, you can speak to somebody on the web chat, and it's a real human. It's not a bot.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sarah.
Thank
Enjoy
you
the
very
rest of your day.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.